There's something that you probably don't want to hear, but I have to tell you, and it's that Desmos trick that you just learned where you just plug in all the answer choices into the graph is going to fail you on the SAT, and it's going to keep you at a plateau that keeps your score way below what your actual potential is. And after I got a 1590 on the digital SAT, I realized that College Board is now just hiring people to make sure that the SAT is literally Desmos and hack proof. And it means that in the harder second module, if you go in just knowing how to hack things with Desmos or how to use specific tips and tricks on the English section, you're going to go in and you're going to realize that you're going against questions that have no way to be solved with hacks. And the only way you can actually solve them is concepts. And I'm going to show you how exactly you can start doing concept mastery instead of just learning the hacks and how to actually be able to do the best on the second module of the SAT. So let's first just go over what are hacks and how do they matter on the SAT. And we'll look specifically at the math and the reading sections and how you can implement the best strategies to actually be able to solve the questions. So a hack is basically just a way for you to solve stuff on the SAT without actually knowing the concepts that you need, and instead just having some kind of shortcut or other mental way to actually be able to solve the hacks. And the biggest thing that you'll see on the digital SAT especially is Desmos, because with Desmos, there's so many different questions where you don't have to know anything about the specific math or the specific question type that they're asking about, and then you can just go ahead, plug in the answer choices or plug the equation into Desmos, and then just be able to solve it, and then that's that, and then you're pretty much done. But here's the main issue is that especially when you're in the second module math and you're more towards the end of the second module and it's starting to get really difficult, the College Board has started Desmos proofing these sections. And the way that this usually looks is by putting in a bunch of constants into the problems into a way that you can only solve it on paper and algebraically. For example, they might put A, B, C, D, E all into the same question. And that way, if you put in all 5 of those into Desmos, there's pretty much no way to test it out with just a normal Desmos hack. Only knowing the way to solve it, specifically with Desmos, is not going to help you. And this is where I have to kind of make a caveat here. I'm not saying that these Desmos tricks are bad. They're probably the main thing that still is able to help you actually be able to get to the second half of the hardest module and be able to get to the questions where you actually have to know the concepts. And I attributed a ton of my success in the SAT to the specific hacks that I knew. But here's the thing, you can't only rely on hacks, because when you get to the end of the second module specifically, and then you just rely on hacks, there's nothing that you can do at that point, because they've made these questions in such a way where you can only solve them with specifically knowing the concepts. Like, I'll give you a specific example. Let's say there's an equation and you want to be able to solve first, you have to be able to solve for the specific answer choices, but you have to be able to solve how many, for example, you look at a polynomial and you have to know how many specific ways, like the answer choices are going to be plugged in and how many solutions there are to the polynomial, which is a pretty common SAT question, right? So the way that you would do it with the concepts is with the discriminant, you would do b squared minus 4ac, and then you'd solve it algebraically from there. But you can also do this with Desmos and just plug in the equation into Desmos and then just be able to solve it and just look at the graph and just try to see where it intersects and just do it like that. But here's the biggest issue. A lot of the times College Board will take multiple constants, put it into the polynomial, and then you'll have no way to actually be able to solve it, because specifically, you can solve questions with Desmos when there's one constant, because you can go into Desmos, do the feature where you can adjust the one constant with a slider, and then it's able to work. But once there's more than one constant, it becomes pretty much impossible to do these with Desmos, and you can really only do it by actually just doing it on paper and knowing the strategy. So that's why, like, my main suggestion is for all of the first module and for like the first half of the second module, you should just go through at Desmos, solve everything really quickly, because it also helps you get rid of mistakes. But in the second harder module and in all the hard math practice that you're going to do when you're studying for the SAT, and that's the most important part, is during your practice, you're going to want to not overuse Desmos, because when you get to the second half, there's going to be questions where you can't use Desmos, and this is going to plateau your score so much. And that's when the first time I took the SAT, I got a way lower score than what I actually could have done, because I spent way too much time just studying Desmos for the digital SAT instead of studying the actual math concepts that you needed. And as a result, I went in once I flew through the first module and the first half of the second module, and then in the second half of the hard module, there were so many questions I had no idea how to do. I was plugging in so many different things into Desmos. There were like 5 equations. I had like 5 different sliders trying to solve these with Desmos hacks, and it just completely didn't work. So you have to be able to actually solve it without the Desmos hacks. And it's not just Desmos where this is a problem. It's also a huge problem on the reading, because I see both in the grammar part of the reading and in like the reading comprehension vocabulary part, I see so many different people try to like give you ways where, oh, you don't have to read the full passage or get a full comprehension of reading through the passage, and you can just use these like random little tricks that are help you be able to like read half the passage and still like kind of know what the author's talking about and be able to still solve the question and be able to like still solve it. But the issue is that doesn't work. So the biggest thing that people, like the biggest example that I can think of that where people talk about this on the reading section is they'll say, oh, you shouldn't just like read the whole passage on these reading comprehension questions. You should just read through all of the answer choices first. You should read through them, and then you just kind of skim through the passage to be able to see, oh, let's look at the part that's specifically relevant to the actual like answer choices that are there. So you'll have to read the whole passage and then you'll be able to save a little bit of time, which it's true. You might save a little bit of time on some questions doing that. But the issue is on a lot of other questions, the College Board specifically designs the way their questions are written so that if you just read the answer choices and the question, and then you just skim through the passage, you're gonna miss details in other parts of the passage that are super important. So what you should always be doing on the reading section, instead of trying to do these tricks where you don't have to read the whole passage, read the question that it asks, but don't read the answer choices. You should then just read the entire passage completely and understand everything that they, like almost like mentally paraphrase every single sentence to look at what the actual meaning of what to look at the meaning of what the author is actually talking about. And then from there, you should go and you should answer the questions, and then you won't just like make a silly mistake, which is something that I used to do a ton when I didn't read the whole passage, is you just make a mistake based on something that you didn't actually read in the passage. So you just need to read the whole passage and then answer the questions. And you probably see this even more on grammar. I've seen a lot of people suggest something like, oh, on grammar, just look at, for example, the shortest one is most likely to be right, which I guess, sure, if you're just in a bind and you have no idea what to do, sure, you can just click the shortest one. But a lot of these tricks where it's like, on these grammar tricks where it's like, oh, the shortest one is the most likely to be correct. Or there's a ton of other ones like, oh, if it says however, or if it says something else like that, it's always going to be wrong. What you need to understand is that the College Board loves to trick people with this, and they love to look at these really common grammar tricks and then do questions where the grammar trick answer is the wrong one, and you need to actually know the correct rule to actually be able to answer the question properly. So that's just the most important thing, is just understand the actual grammar rules, please, and don't just rely on these tricks. I've seen way too many people just rely on these tricks and then get completely destroyed on the SAT and score way lower than what their actual potential is. Like literally probably 150 points lower than what their actual potential is, just because they're relying on these tricks. And even if it did work at the start of the digital SAT, which I can't lie, it probably did work better at the initial start of the digital SAT, the College Board has realized that a lot of the times the SAT questions weren't really assessing what people actually knew, but were assessing like almost their knowledge of the test or their tricks on the test, especially with Desmos. So they're moving to new types of questions where if you just rely on these tricks, you're not gonna be able to do it right. So I know this video might seem kind of obvious to some people, but to other people, I'm not trying to just be like some old English teacher who's like, you have to know the exact grammar rules, you have to like understand the math for your future. That's not what I'm trying to say. But it's that if you don't understand the specific concepts the College Board is testing, because there's not that many concepts, like you can get through math with really 20 major concepts, and there's really like 10 to 15 major grammar rules that you actually have to know. If you just know these, try to apply them without the Desmos tricks and to go through hard practice problems without the Desmos tricks, I promise you, you're gonna do so much better than if you just rely on the tricks, because the tricks can get you up to a certain point. They can get you up to probably about a 1400, but after the point of the 1400, when you have to start getting the really hard problems right on the SAT, at that point, the tricks aren't going to save you, and you actually have to be able to know how to do the concepts. So if you're trying to break through a 1400 and you want to be able to actually solve the concepts, you can click the link in the description to be able to work with us. I promise you, we'll go through all the concepts and we'll go through everything that you need to know, really personalized to you. Otherwise, I still hope you learned something from this video. I hope that this changed the way that you actually study for the SAT, because I promise you, it's going to help you better. And no matter what, just good luck on your next test.